ಸಂಸಾರದಾವಾನಲನಿಧಲೋಕ ತ್ರಣಯ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣ ಗಣತ್ವಂ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣ ಪ್ರಪತ್ಸ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಗುಣರ್ನವಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರೋ ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರೋ ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರೋ ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ महाप्रभो कीर्तन नृत्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेन कीर्तन नृत्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेन रोमाञ्चकम्प श्रुतरङ्गबाजो वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दं श्रीविग्रहाराधननित्यनाना शृङ्गारतनुमन्दिरमर्जनादौ धननिचनाना शृङ्गारतनमन्दिरनाद युक्तश्च भक्तं शनियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत्प्रसाद स्वादन तृप्तान् हरिभक्त संगान् प्रसाद स्वादन तृप्तान् हरिभक्त संगान् कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नाम् श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपारा माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नाम् माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नाम् प्रतीक्षणा स्वाधनलोलुपस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् निकुञ्जयूनो रतिकेलिसेद्याय यायालिभिर्युक्तिरपेक्षणीया यायालिभिर्युक्तिरपेक्षणीया तत्र त्रिदाक्षादतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् साक्षादरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रैः उक्तस्तथा भाव्यत एव शब्दिः किन्तु प्रभोर्य प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान् न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य प्रसादान् न गति कुतोऽपि ध्यायान् सुवंशस्य यस्य श्रीसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् श्रीसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hariharaya Nama Krishnaya Davaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohana Ram Sri Madhusudana गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ श्री मनमोहन श्री चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत सीता हरि गुरु वैष्णव भगवत गीता नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत सीता हरि गुरु वैष्णव भगवत गीता श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास रघुनाथ हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय श्री राधा नीला माधव राधा नीला माधव श्री राधे नीला माधव राधा नीला माधव राधा नीला माधव श्री राधे जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रामाय जय सीताराम जय सीताराम जय लक्ष्मण हनुमान जय सीताराम जय लक्ष्मण हनुमान जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल
Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Daine. Hiranyakashipu Vakshaha. लीला चंका नकालाए ito narasimha parato narasimha yato yato yami tato narasimha Baher narasimha through the hair narasimha Narasimhamadim charanam prapade Tava karakamalavare nakam abhuta shringaram lalita iranyakashipu Tanuvringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Malavare Jaya Narasimhadev, Jaya Narasimhadev, Jaya Narasimhadev, Jaya Narasimhadev. Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya 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 Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
नरसिंहदेव भगवान की
जय।
भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की शिला प्रभुपाद की
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रति देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रति देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रति देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः
वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय
जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाए अभिलाषी जे तुम्हारा शरण लय तारा वांछा पूर्ण होय ये तुम्हारा शरण लय तारा वांछा पूर्ण होय कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावनवासी मोराया विलास विलास कुंज दियवास नयने हेरिबो सदा जुगल रूपरासी हे निवेदन दरो सकीर अनुगत करो सेवा आदि करो दिए करो निज दासी दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा न बासी यानी कानी जप पानी ब्रह्मा हत्यांति कानी च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा प्रदे प्रदे यानी कानी जप पानी ब्रह्मा हत्यांति तानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा प्रदे प्रदे यानि कानि जप पानि ब्रह्म हत्यांति कानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा प्रदे प्रदे यानि कानि जप पानि ब्रह्म हत्यांति कानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा प्रदे प्रदे यानि कानि जप पानि ब्रह्म हत्यांति कानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा प्रदे प्रदे Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Vrindaya Tulasi Devaya Priyaya Keshwasa Vishnu Bhakti Pade Devi Satyavadaya Namo Namaha. Vrindaya Tulasi Devaya Priyaya Keshwasa Vishnu Bhakti Pade Devi Satyavadaya Namo Namaha. Vrindaya Tulasi Devaya Priyaya Keshwasa Vishnu Bhakti Pade Devi Satyavadaya Namo Namaha. Vrinda Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Oh Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow down before you again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes charge of you has wishes to bestow mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me residence in the precious groves of Shri Vrindavana Dham. Thus within my vision I shall always behold the beautiful paths of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the carnival dance of the Brata. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly son of Krishna praise. May I always swim in the love of Shri Radha and 3. To dissipate the order of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or to pursuing the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation for the name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activity in the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious spiritual activities, often invaded the fruit activities, karma, kanda. 9. To inspect the faces expression about glorious holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who clings to Vaishnava must carefully guard against these offenses in order to achieve desired success. Krishna, Prema. Now let us have our most humble obeisances on all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as I trees who can fulfill to everyone. They are full of compassion to the fallen conditioned soul. Shri Chaitanya Shastakam ki jai. Jeto Darpana Marjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shriya Gairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamita Sadhanam Sarvatma Snapanam Paramijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakali Bahudani Cha Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Etadishi Tava Kripa Bhagavam Mamati Durudaiva Midisham Yiha Janina Nuragaha Trinata Pisuni Jena Tarora Pisa Ishnuna Amanina Amanadena Kirtanya Sadahari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Kamaye Mama Dhammani Dhammanishware Bhavata Bhaktir Haituki Dvaji Ainanda Tanuja Kingaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sisaturi Sasesha Vichintaya Nayanam Galadashuru Dharaya Vadanam Gadgada Rudaya Kira Pulakani Chitam Vapurukada Tava Nama Grahane Bhavishati Yugaita Nimishena Chakusha Pravisha Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me Ashri Shava Bhadratam Dinnastumam Adarsanam Marmhatam Karotuva Yatha Tatha Va Vidathatu Lampato Madprana Natha Susaiva Natparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Shastakam ki jai. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleans the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes fire of conditioned life for repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is prime foundation of humanity in large because it expresses with transcend. It is to transcend knowledge, increase the ocean transcend bliss, enable us to fully taste the nectar for which all wish anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone for all beneficial human beings. Thus we have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendent names are vested all transcendent energy. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting its name. Oh my Lord, out of kindness enable us to easily approach you by holy name, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking himself Lord than the straw in the street. One should be more taller than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, we can chant holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. Oh Sahamananda, I'm your eternal servitor. Yes, somehow I fall into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me at one of the atoms of your lotus feet. Oh my Lord, while my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant the holy name, while my voice choke up, while the hair of my body stand end a recitation of your name. Oh Govinda, feeling of separation, I'm constantly a moment to be like a great millennium. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and shall remain so even he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipable Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Shri Mangala Charanam prayers ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Karave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakham Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachadadesha Tarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhavid Namaha Madhuryo Chala Premadaya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinadarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pasiddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sasha Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Pujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumistvam Nirtishta Sajanapriya Vaishnava Sava Bhama Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpadurupishta Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Pavne Pyo Vaishnavi Pyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurateshe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakham Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karna Sindho Dinapanto Chakapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jatam Srato Pangor Mamamanda Materkati Masarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindarana Kalpaju Madha Shimadra Nagara Singhasanasto Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtaribi Sevamano Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsham Vinusaner Gopir Gopinatha Shri Yestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Data Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Brahma Samhita prayers ki Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadyadya Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukha Praviksha Laksha Riteshu Surabhir Abhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shatasam Brahmasevimanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Konantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham Parharvatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kantarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shopam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chantaka Lasavanamare Vamshi Ranankadam Panayakeli Kalavilasham Govjamam Chapanga Lalitam Yata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Anganyasya Sakalentira Vrittimanti Pashanti Panti Karayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chimmaya Sadujala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achotam Anadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durabam Madurabam Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantasukoti Shatavasara Sampragamyo Vayurathapi Manaso Munipangavanan Sophiyasti Yat Prapada Simya Vichinta Tattve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Saura Chayitum Jagadanta Kotim Yachakti Rasti Jagadanta Chayaya Danta Antantarastha Paramanu Chayantarastham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yatpava Pavitadiyo Manujastateva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Bhusha Suktaryam Eva Nigama Pratithaistuvanti Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananta Chimmaya Rasa Pratipavitapi Sthapiya Eva Nijaruptaya Kalapi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churuta Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hidayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundam Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Mutishu Kalanyamena Tishtan Nanavataram Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapumam Yo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Go ahead.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis, who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis, who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and at the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities in the company of her confidants, Sakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion tinged with salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So yesterday we were going to discuss also chapter 9, text 11 of the Bhagavad Gita in respect to the purport that we read, which was Canto 3, chapter 9, verse number 6. So we'll read text number 7 now, and then we'll go to the Bhagavad Gita and read what we were going to finish yesterday. So who's going to read? So that is, you have Canto 3, chapter 9, verse number 7. Oh my Lord.
Just the translation, Prabhu, right?
Yeah, please.
O my Lord, persons who are bereft of the all auspicious performance of chanting and hearing about your transcendental activities are certainly unfortunate and are also bereft of good sense. They engage in inauspicious activities, enjoying sense gratification for a very little while. Purport by His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The next question is why people are against such auspicious activities as chanting and hearing the glories and pastimes of the Lord, which can bring total freedom from the cares and anxieties of material existence. The only answer to this question is that they are unfortunate because of supernatural control due to their offensive activities performed simply for the sake of sense gratification. The Lord's pure devotees, however, take compassion upon such unfortunate persons and, in a missionary spirit, try to persuade them into the line of devotional service. Only by the grace of pure devotees can such unfortunate men be elevated to the position of transcendental service.
Thank you. So here we see a description of about 99.9% of people in the world today. They're bereft of all auspicious performance of chanting and hearing about Lord Krishna's transcendental activities. They're very unfortunate and are also bereft of good sense. In other words, they're also lacking good sense. And they're lacking the benefit of the all auspicious performance of chanting and hearing about Krishna. They engage in inauspicious activities. What are those inauspicious activities? Gambling, meat eating, illicit sex, and intoxication. Now, if you go into the, let's say, Safeway or Walmart or any of the different supermarkets that we have, you'll see gigantic displays of liquor. Is that true? Yeah, it's huge amounts of liquor, wines, and I don't know if they have whiskeys. I'm not sure if they can sell whiskeys in the stores, but they definitely sell a lot of wine. And then they have these huge amounts of medicines, over-the-counter medicines, and then medicines you have to get a prescription for. And then a huge amount of meat, all types of varieties of meat, all kinds of dead animals being sold so that people can eat them and get cancer. And then also a lot of junk magazines with all kinds of junk information in them. And so, I mean, the list goes on of all the inauspicious things in the supermarket. It's actually a supermarket of super sense gratification. And people are ruining their lives by eating all those inauspicious things and engaging in the four most self-destructive habits: meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication. So this is the majority of people. Over 99% of the people in the world today are like this. And they're engaged in inauspicious activities, enjoying sense gratification for a very little while, for a few years, for 20, 40, 30, 50 years, and then they die, and then they go back again to the animal kingdom or other inauspicious bodies. So, Prabhupada says, the next question is why people are against such auspicious activities as chanting and hearing the glories and pastimes of the Lord, which can bring real freedom from the cares and anxieties of material existence. Well, it's because of the educational system. Right from now, almost kindergarten, right through to your PhD in college, people are being taught ignorance. They're not being taught knowledge. And that ignorance causes them to stay in the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and to engage in these sinful activities, meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, and always listening to the news and politics and sports and pornography, all these very inauspicious things, and they develop these really bad habits. Every day you're seeing a teacher or a sports, let's say, teacher or different types of movie stars and baseball, basketball stars. They get caught engaging in exploiting other people and or exploiting children, and they end up going to jail, or they end up committing suicide. So we see that there are horrible things going on in the world today, and there's no end to it. And besides, you also have war, and you have pestilences, and you have problems with the environment and weather and hurricanes and earthquakes and floods. Now the question is, why is this happening? It's a very simple answer. People are engaged in sinful activities. If they give up meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication, 95% of those problems would go away almost overnight. The other 5% would eventually go away as they become purified by Krishna consciousness. So we see all this suffering, all this confusion. It's unnecessary. But because people are being misled by the educational system, they're being misled by all types of different propaganda and all kinds of false concepts. They're just going. They're going down the path of self-destruction, and they don't even understand how it's happening. It's a very dangerous situation. So, this is explained also in Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, 11th verse. So let's read that. Avajanati mam mudha manasimtana masvitaha param bhavam ajananto mamaya ajananto mama bhuta maheshwara. Okay, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord and all that be. So this is a verse by Lord Krishna. He's saying that when he appears in the material world to perform his transcendental pastimes, foolish people deride him. They make fun of him. They criticize him because they don't understand who he is and his transcendental nature. So let's read the purport. Who's going to read that? That's 9th chapter, 11th verse, Bhagavad Gita.
Purport from the other explanations of the previous verses in this chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. The Personality of Godhead, who conducts a certain maintenance and annihilation, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the complete cosmic manifestation, cannot be a human being. Yet there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, he is the original Supreme Personality, as is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. He is the Supreme Lord. There are many Ishvaras, controllers, and one appears greater than another. In the ordinary management of affairs in the material world, we find some official or director, and above him there is a secretary, and above him a minister, and above him a president. Each of them is a controller, but one is controlled by another. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that Krishna is the supreme controller. There are many controllers, undoubtedly, both in the material and the spiritual world. But Krishna is the supreme controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna, and his body is Sachidananda, non-material. Material bodies cannot perform the wonderful acts described in previous verses. His body is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Although he is not a common man, the foolish deride him and consider him to be a man. His body is called here Manusim, because he is acting just like a man, a friend of Arjuna's, a politician involved in the battle of Kurukshetra. In so many ways, he is acting just like an ordinary man. But actually his body is Sachid Ananda Vigraha, eternal bliss and knowledge absolute. This is confirmed in the Vedic language also. Sachid Ananda Rupaya Krishnaya. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the eternal blissful form of knowledge. Gopala Tapani Upanishad 1.1. There are other descriptions in the Vedic language also. Tam Ekam Govindam. You are Govinda, the pleasure of the senses and the pleasure of the senses and the cows. Sachid Ananda Vigraham. And your form is transcendental, full of knowledge, bliss and eternality. Gopala Tapani Upanishad 1.38. Despite the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna's body, its full bliss and knowledge, there are many so-called scholars and commentators of Bhagavad Gita who deride Krishna as an ordinary man. The scholar may be born an extraordinary man due to his previous good work, but this conception of Sri Krishna is due to a poor fund of knowledge. Therefore, he is called Muda. For only foolish persons consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being. The foolish consider Krishna an ordinary human being because they do not know the confidential activities of the Supreme Lord and his different energies. They do not know that Krishna's body is a symbol of complete knowledge and bliss, that he is the supreme proprietor of everything, and that he can award liberation to anyone. Because they do not know that Krishna has so many transcendental qualifications, they deride him.
Okay, stop there. So that's a lot of information right there, and there's plenty more in this purport. It's a long purport. So here we see Srila Prabhupada is able to explain the most esoteric or mystical knowledge of God in simple English and make it understandable to everyone. Therefore, it's important that we hear this every day and let it sink into our minds that basically 99% plus of the population of the world are going in the wrong direction, and they're being self-destructive all the way through their lives. And because of that, there's unnecessary suffering, there's unnecessary bewilderment, there's unnecessary wars, There's unnecessary climate problems. All this is due to sinful activities. If they simply would give up the 4 pillars of sin, meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, and take up chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. Dancing is very important in Krishna consciousness. It's a sign that a person is no longer inhibited by false ideas, and therefore they dance freely and happily and take prasadam to their satisfaction and regularly attend the classes and get more and more enthusiasm to be Krishna conscious. So this is a process of self-purification. Going to schools today is a process of self-destruction and self-imposed ignorance that keeps a person always in difficult situations. And people make gigantic mistakes that ruin their lives due to this ignorance of the educational system. And we've discussed this many other times. So, let's have someone else read from that point on. Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world is a manifestation of his internal energy. Who's going to read? Go ahead. No, nor do they know.
Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world is a manifestation of his internal energy. He is the master of the material energy. As has been explained in several places, Mam Maya Duratya.
So when Krishna appears in the material world, he's not under the influence of the material energy like we are. He's always protected by his transcendental energy of the spiritual world, or Yoga Maya. So this is another thing people don't understand. Go ahead.
He claims that the material energy, although very powerful, is under his control. And whoever surrenders unto him can get out of the control of this material energy.
Well, what is the control of the material energy? Birth, old age, disease, and death. Most people are so dumb and ignorant, they never ask the question, why am I subjected to this? Birth, old age, disease, and death. We should ask this question. That's the beginning of spiritual life, when you ask that question. Why am I subject to these things? Nobody asks that question. Well, very few people ask that question. That's how much they're overwhelmed with tamas, or ignorance. They just go on happily or merrily thinking, well, it's normal. It's normal to get old, to get sick and die. No, it's not normal. But yet, people don't question it. And then they come up with these silly ideas of how to stop getting old and sick and dying. And the more ridiculous ideas they have for countering these things, the more stupid they look. Like, for example, if you were, if you spent $3 billion to build a rocket that can go to, let's say, the moon or to Mars, and when you began the launch of it, it goes up in the air and then blows up in the air, and $3 billion is incinerated in front of your eyes. Is that a sign of success, or is that a gigantic failure? You tell me. Huh? It's a huge failure. So here, Elon Musk is supposed to be the single most richest person in the world. He not only destroys almost 20, 30 miles of the ecology in Texas because of the launch of the rocket. It made a complete mess of the ecology of that area. his rocket that's supposed to go to I guess Mars blows up in the air, and he loses $3 billion and all the work that they put into that rocket. This is a gigantic failure. The same thing was happening to the United States when they were launching rockets to go out into outer space. So they stopped. They said, okay, let the rich guys do it. You know, maybe they'll be more successful than us. Does it look like they're more successful? No. The Chinese, the Japanese, the Indians, they've all lanced rockets into space, and most of them have failed. So, what are they trying to do? They're trying to do things that are impossible to do. Like, for example, you have people promising that by 2050, death will be optional. In other words, they'll have a way to prolong life infinitely, so that if you don't want to die, you don't have to die. Do you actually believe that's going to happen? Well, there are people that believe it. Huh? Do you know some? What?
They want to do it virtually, some of them.
Virtually.
Yeah. So they want to keep you alive virtually, eternally, by providing the AI and all.
What does that mean, virtually? Do you want to be a virtual being? The whole thing is ridiculous. Say. Yeah.
Obviously, in science or in technology, there is a failure is also a stepping stone for success. They say. I mean, I'm not there are fundamental truths which we know that life cannot be extended with birth, death, but going back to, because I just want to be able to understand the argument for generally the experiment is how you make progress. Sometimes you fail, but you will learn from the
No, but the main point is there are certain things that are laws of nature that you cannot change.
Correct. Yeah.
And one thing is birth, death, old age, and disease. You can't change it.
Yeah, just going back
Another
to the
thing is, with the bodies that we have, going to other planets and thinking that we can survive on them. You're not going to change it. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And it's already stated.
They might physically go there, but they cannot really live in that space.
No, you can't. I mean, look, they went to the moon supposedly in 1969. And they were advertising they're going to start selling properties on the moon. You know, the real estate agents in New York. Why don't you look that up to make sure I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. And then they were saying there's going to be Pan Am flights to the moon by 1975. It's a bunch of junk. None of that stuff happened. And then they said, wait, there's no water on the moon, so now we're going to go to Mars. So they found some excuse to cover their ignorance. So you see, they're trying to do something. They're trying to do things that are impossible to do, because they cannot overcome the laws of material nature. So therefore, they'll spend billions of dollars trying to do those things, just like Elon Musk. What would have happened if he used that $3 billion to spread Krishna consciousness? Oh no, he would never do that, because that's religious, or that might help people become happy, and he can't make any money out of that. So you see how these greedy nonsense people are misleading other people, and it's going on, and it's getting worse and worse, and people are becoming more and more frustrated. And there's no solution to any of these problems. Okay, go ahead. What are you going to say?
Yeah, so there is a site called the Lunar Registry.
The Lunar Registry. It should be the Loony Registry. The Looney Tooney Registry. Go ahead.
It says International Lunar Land Registry. Welcome to the moon. Ready to get started? Choose the landing site on the moon.
Take out your checkbook. So that was in the 1970s or what?
It is an active site even now, man.
Even now, you can buy land on the moon?
It looks like this is a website that's active right now. And then they have different areas on moon. They have given different names. The Bay of Rainbows, the Sea of Rains, Lake of Dreams, Sea of Tranquility, Taurus Mountains.
Wow, that sounds really nice.
The Lunar Alps.
Lunar Alps.
Sea of Serenity, Sea of Ingenuity. So select your preferred location from the region listed above. Not certain which region to select, click on the region name above to access detailed description. It's that easy to buy moon property.
Oh, it's real easy, yeah. It's real easy to throw your money away. You see how crazy people have become? And they get away with it. There's going to be some crazy people that are going to buy land on the moon. And they'll never be able to go there. And even if they go there, they're going to die. They're not going to exist.
Looks like this happened in 1980s.
Yeah, 1970s, 1980s. And they were guaranteeing flights by Pan Am. Of course, Pan Am went bankrupt. They were guaranteeing that there would be regular flights to the moon by 1975. I remember that when I was a kid. I was hearing that. I was thinking, wow, you can go to the moon. Nobody went to the moon. We also know that the United States, never went to the moon either. The whole thing was a hoax. So we gave the proof of that.
So there is one person, Ramani Mataji sent a link. So there is a person by name Dennis Hope. He has been selling land on moon for the past 35 years and he made about $10 million. $10 million.
I'm in the wrong business. $10 million.
$10 million.
That means there's 10 million idiots in this world.
Because of their material attachment, Maharaj, they are buying because we know there is no truth, but
Is there anybody here who wants to buy some land on the moon? I can give you a land title if you want. It only costs $20,000. That's all. Yeah, that's cheap. Okay, so here we see. I mean, we're not making this up. This is real nonsense, and this is going on over and over again. But the nonsense is increasing in many different directions, like gender neutrality and or fluidity, and how you can change your sex, and this thing and that thing. It's unending. All the misinformation that's coming out. Now, what is our solution to this? This we began to discuss. The solution is Lord Chaitanya's made it very easy to go back to Godhead. That means you could bypass the moon and go back to the spiritual world. Right? And 100% guarantee. So, instead of buying land on the moon, wouldn't it be better to purify yourself through Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead? That's something that has some substance to it. Whereas going to the moon or buying land on the moon, there's no substance to it. The whole thing is a hoax. It's cheating. It's lying. It's misconception. So here we see we're trying to preach the truth of how people can become free from the cycle of birth and death. And very few people are interested in it. Very few people. Why? Because they're completely in illusion, believing things that are impossible to do, believing they can do things that are impossible. The number one thing that is completely impossible is to prolong life in this body. There was an article 2 days ago in the news. You can look it up. Now people are saying very emphatically that it's not really possible to live more than 100 years in this body. Look that up. Now, of course, we knew that right from the beginning of the material creation, that you can't, in Kali Yuga, you can't live much more than 100 years. But these are people who were believing that you could have life extension by, nanotechnology or doing different techniques of, different techniques of food or diet or this or that. Do you see it? It's an article that came out maybe 2-3 days ago.
There are other prior articles.
Okay, go ahead.
They say humans won't ever live far beyond 115 years. This is a few years ago, though.
Yeah, they don't have the full information. No, it's just 2 days ago, there was an article in the paper again saying that although people thought that they could extend life extension beyond 100 years, they doubt it now. They don't think it's going to be possible. So you see, there are certain things that are impossible to bypass because they're laws of nature established by God himself. So who is going to be able to change those laws? Nobody. But yet they're trying, and they're spending millions and billions of dollars to do it. This is the foolishness of the leaders of society today. You find anything else?
Yes, there is another article. This one just came on April 4th, 2023. I don't know if this is like this month only.
Yes, it is. We're in April still.
So, but this is a different argument wherein it says a blueprint for longevity. New study has an answer for why some people live to be over 100 years. So
okay, go ahead. What does it say?
Throughout the history, brilliant minds have tried to figure out the secret behind living longer. Much of the research has credited diet and exercise, but a group of scientists expanded on previous data to suggest another theory.
Another theory. Another nonsense theory. Go ahead.
Researchers from Boston University and Tufts Medical Center found people who live to be 100 years or older, called centenarians, may have a unique composition of immune cells that's highly protective against illnesses.
May have. Right. All speculation. Go ahead.
Yeah, they may have immune cells that's highly protective against illnesses. So according to their peer-reviewed journal study.
Okay, so this is the general thing now. May have, perhaps, we hope that. All these phrases are speculation. They don't have any evidence. They have to do some experimentation, but usually all their experiments fail. And that's why they came up with this article that I read 2 days ago, that now they're very, very doubtful that people can live more than 100 years. Okay, some people might live to be 105, 110, but most people die now when they're 60, 70, 80 years old. A lot of people die when they're 30 years old, 40 years old, right? So trying to do something impossible is the most silly nonsense thing in the world. And that's what most rich people are trying to do today. They're trying to do something that's impossible, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and so forth. And this just misleads people. It gives them false hopes, and it avoids any attempt to become Krishna conscious. Okay, so now let's continue reading the purport. Go ahead. Give the microphone back to her. Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Start from there again.
Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world is a manifestation of his internal energy. He is the master of the material energy. As has been explained in several places, Mam Maya Durateya, he claims that the material energy, although very powerful, is under his control. And whoever surrenders unto him can get out of the control of this material energy.
There it is. Saranam, surrender to Krishna. Now, usually when you say you have to surrender to someone, it means something negative. But surrender to Krishna is something most positive. Because by surrendering to Krishna, you become gradually liberated from the cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead. Now, do we believe this? That's the problem. Most people don't believe these things. Therefore, they never try for it. But yet, they believe all these silly things like buying land on the moon and taking steroids to increase the strength of the body, or this thing, or that thing. They believe these type of hopeless endeavors that are impossible to achieve. So now, this is the real question in our life. Who are we going to believe? I chose, over 50 years ago, to believe Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas. And I made the best decision in my life. It's never let's say, I never regretted making that decision. Not at any time. And you can see, whoever has made that decision, they've become very successful. Like, you look at someone like Radhanath Swami, or you look at Bhakti Bhakti Chiru Maharaj, and you look at so many devotees that made the same decision. They became very successful, right? Without going to college, without getting degrees, without starting businesses. They became very, very successful. And they're living very peaceful and steady lives. So, if your purpose is to be successful in this lifetime, you have much more of a chance to be successful by being Krishna conscious than by starting a business or investing in stocks or this thing or that thing. Right. Now, can we believe this? Well, I can give you a lot of examples. Like, what I did, I came to Seattle after liberating the Berkeley Temple from going bankrupt, and then rebuilding it, and then I came to Seattle to try and save the temple here. And the temple here was a broken down house. But by being perseverant, not giving up, we've been able to build temples, right? And help hundreds, thousands of people to be Krishna conscious. Now, was it easy? No, it's not necessarily easy, but at every step, Krishna helped. So these are examples. And the same thing has happened with many other devotees who had the faith to be Krishna conscious. You can look, so many devotees now in India have opened large temples. How did they do it? They started with nothing, right? They just went to a city and started preaching. And little by little, they were able to get some following. And eventually, they've built temples, and big temples and expensive temples. And so here you're seeing these examples, but are we understanding what's happening? It all depends on sharanam, surrendering to the Lord. If you surrender to the Lord and you have complete faith in the statements of the Lord, you will be the most successful person. And the most successful person is Srila Prabhupada. In a few years, he built up this gigantic movement. And it's still going on. And he's established it on such solid, principles that it's going to continue. So here are examples that we're seeing. But do we actually believe it? That's the question. If we say yes, like for example, I was told many, many years ago, go to this place and open a temple. I didn't have any money. I didn't even know, I was not really an expert in Krishna consciousness, but I believed it. So I was able to open the first temple in France, and then on many other different places that I went. So these are like what you would call miracles. And that's without having any, advanced degrees in business or this thing or that thing. I also was able to build a large company in France with hundreds of employees. And I didn't have any business experience, but I was able to do it. Again, it was all by Krishna's mercy and Prabhupada's mercy. So, can we learn from these examples? Yeah, there's plenty of examples of devotees that have done amazing things starting from zero and without any real professional training. Their only training was following the regulative principles, chanting Hare Krishna and dancing, taking prasadam, and preaching. So, what did Prabhupada do? If you read his biography, you'll see. He was telling people like me and others, go to this city and open a temple. He didn't say, I'll give you $10,000, go try and open a temple. No. He just said, go to this city, like a city in New Mexico or a city in Arizona, and open a temple. And that's what devotees did, because they were fully surrendered to Prabhupada, and they believed that it was possible. Now, was it easy? Not necessarily easy, but it was not impossible. And therefore, those devotees succeeded. Now, today, we are so, let's say, confused. We think, well, we got to have a degree, we have to go to school 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and then you have to have some insider help, like an uncle or a relative that can help us. Then we can succeed. No. You just need faith in Krishna and follow Prabhupada's instructions. You will succeed tremendously. And there are examples. Look what the devotees have done in India. Look what devotees have done all around the world. In Russia, and Australia, all these different places, the same thing happened. Because of their faith and their determination, they were able to do fantastic developments in a relatively short period of time without having college degrees or advanced degrees in science or accounting or anything. Okay, so continue reading.
If a soul surrendered to Krishna can get out of the influence of material energy, then how can the Supreme Lord, who conducts the creation, maintenance and annihilation of the whole cosmic nature, have a material body like us? So this conception of Krishna is complete foolishness. Foolish peoples, however, cannot conceive.
Foolish persons.
Foolish persons, however, cannot conceive that the personality of Godhead Krishna, appearing just like an ordinary man, can be the controller of all the atoms and of the gigantic manifestations of the universal form. Manifestation of the universal form. The biggest and the minutest are beyond their conception. So they cannot imagine that a form like that of a human being can simultaneously control the infinite and the minute. Actually, although he is controlling the infinite and the finite, he is apart from all this manifestation. It is clearly stated concerning his Yogam Ashwaryam, his inconceivable transcendental energy, that he can control the infinite and the finite simultaneously, and that he can remain aloof from them. Although the foolish cannot imagine how Krishna, who appears just like a human being, can control the infinite and the finite, infinite and the finite, those who are pure devotees accept this, for they know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, they completely surrender unto him and engage in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord.
Okay, stop there. See, this is the point, this saranam, this complete surrender to the Lord, where you have complete faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the controller of everything in the material world and the spiritual world. And if you surrender to him and simply follow his instructions, then he will help you in every way possible for you to not only be successful in your endeavors, but also go back to Godhead. Now, success or failure does not disturb the devotee. You cannot be all the time successful, and you cannot be all the time failure. But there's going to be sometimes some successes and some failures. The symptom of a genuine devotee is they're not disturbed by success or failure. They continue in their devotional service, especially following the regulative principles and chanting the rounds and taking nice prasadam and preaching and going on Sankirtan. I remember going on Sankirtan sometimes 16 hours a day in France. In a short period of time, we became famous. We made 3 movies with national movie stars. Because we became part of the culture of France, because we were going out 16 hours a day, sometimes till 10 o'clock at night, performing Sankirtan. There was this one place we would go to a lot at night, because a lot of people would go there. There were a lot of cafes and places where people could sit down and drink coffee or liquor or something, and we would chant. So there was this one guy who was a fire eater. Actually, he's not an eater, fire thrower. So what they do is they don't swallow, but they hold some gasoline in their mouth, and then they spit it out, and they ignite it. So this guy was a real demon. So we would go to this place called Montparnasse, which was a really very highly frequented place by all kinds of movie stars and people at night. And they had all these outdoor cafes. And we would chant. But then by 8:30, when the crowds would be at their peak, this guy would come, and he'd scream out as loud as he could, "J'arrive," which means I'm here, which meant get out of the way, or otherwise I'll burn you guys to death. And he would do that. If we didn't move, he would get some gasoline in his mouth and spit it toward us and set it on fire. Yeah, he was a real demon. He was like a dragon. So but we went there anyway every day, every night, or especially on the weekends. And then when he chased us away, we'd try and go a little farther away, and he would have the prime place. But anyway, somehow we would still stay near the place and continue our sankirtan. So one day it was around 8:30, and we were all waiting, for the demon to come, and he didn't come. And then it was like surprising. So then I saw one of his assistants was watching us from the the crowd of people. So I went over to him. I said, "So where's your boss?" He says, "Oh, you didn't hear?" I said, "What do you mean here?" He said he had an accident. He said instead of spitting it out, he swallowed the gasoline, and he's in the hospital right now. We're not even sure he's going to live. And I was thinking, thank God it happened. And that was the end of him. Right? So Krishna took care of him. You know how dangerous it is to hold gasoline in your mouth and then spit it out? So he made a mistake. Instead of spitting it out, he swallowed, and he burned himself. And I guess he died, because we never saw him again. So these are things that are real experiences that we went through, but we were not, let's say, disturbed by them. Sometimes we were arrested by the police. We'd have to spend 1 or 2 nights in jail, and then they would let us out. It was all harassment. This was in the beginning times of the Sankirtan movement. But then we became part of the scene, and people just accepted us because they saw us coming out every day for hours and hours, chanting and dancing. And the French, they like to dance and chant. So whether they're dancing and chanting Hare Krishna or dancing and chanting Hallelujah, what's the difference for them, right? So that's the way to change society. It's by massive sankirtan and food and prasadam distribution. You want to do something that becomes famous and becomes a gigantic success. Just expand the sankirtan movement and the prasadam distribution, and it will be tremendously appreciated by the public, and you'll get so much recognition. So we just have to have faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the controller of everything. When he comes, he's not an ordinary person. He's the same person that he is in the spiritual world. He's always protected by the spiritual energy. He's not under the control of the modes of material nature like we are. But we can attain the same level of freedom that he has by following his instructions. You don't realize the power of Krishna consciousness. I can tell you right now, most devotees don't realize it. And because of that, they're going to try and do things that are impossible to achieve. Like find a way to increase the lifespan of a human being, or trying to make the human body immortal. I mean, Hiranyakashipu tried all that. He failed. If he failed, just imagine how easy it is for us to fail, right? He was much more powerful than we are. He failed. Ravana failed. All of them failed, trying to supersede the laws of material nature established by Krishna. Okay, so then now who else is going to read? We'll finish this purport. Who's going to read? Go ahead.
There are many controversies between impersonalists and the personalists about the Lord's appearance as a human being. But if we consult Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the authoritative texts for understanding the science of Krishna, then we can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary man, although he appeared on this earth as an ordinary human. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 1st chapter, When the sages headed by Shaunaka inquired about the activities of Krishna, they said,
It's all right, read the English. Lord Shri Krishna.
Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with Balarama, played like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. The Lord's appearance as a man bewilders the foolish. No human being could perform the wonderful acts that Krishna performed while he was present on this earth. When Krishna appeared before his father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, he appeared with 4 hands, but after the prayers of the parents, he transformed himself into an ordinary child. As stated in the Bhagavatam 10.3.46, he became just like an ordinary child, an ordinary human being. Now here again it is indicated that the Lord's appearance as an ordinary human being is one of the features of his transcendental body. In the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita also, it is stated that Arjuna prayed to see Krishna's form of 4 hands, and after revealing this form, Krishna, when petitioned by Arjuna, again assumed his original human-like form. These different features of the Supreme Lord are certainly not those of an ordinary human being. Some of those who deride Krishna and who are infected with Mayavadi philosophy quote the following verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 3.29.21 to prove that Krishna is just an ordinary man. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatma vastita sada. The Supreme is present in every living entity. We should better take note of this particular verse from the Vaishnava Acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, instead of following the interpretation of unauthorized persons who deride Krishna. Jiva Goswami, commenting on this verse, says that Krishna in his plenary expansion as Paramatma is situated in the moving and the non-moving entities as the Supersoul. So any neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archamurti, the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities is uselessly worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple. There are 3 kinds of devotees of the Lord.
Okay, see, that's very important. He's talking about pujaris. So, it says, Jiva Goswami, commenting on this verse, says that Krishna, in his plenary expansion as Paramatma, is situated in the moving and the non-moving entities as a supersoul. So any neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to Archamurti, or the deities in this temple, which is the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities, is uselessly worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple. That's a huge statement. You have to think about this. You say, if you're pujari and you're worshipping the deity every day, but you don't really show same respect for the deity in the heart of other living entities, then you're uselessly engaged in devotional service. It's being annihilated by the inability to see that the same Lord that you're worshiping on the altar is in the heart of other living entities. And all living entities, not just human beings. This is a huge statement. Okay, go ahead.
There are 3 kinds of devotees of the Lord, and the neophyte is in the lowest stage. The neophyte devotee gives more attention to the deity in the temple than to other devotees. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur warns that this sort of mentality should be corrected. A devotee should see that because Krishna is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, every body is the embodiment or the temple of the Supreme Lord. So as one offers respect to the temple of the Lord, he should similarly properly respect each and every body in which the Paramatma dwells. Everyone should therefore be given proper respect and should not be neglected.
That's a huge statement. This is real Krishna consciousness, not the phony so-called Krishna consciousness of brahmanas that ignore the normal people, which is very, very significant in India. Right? I remember one of our devotees went to Jagannath, and when he entered the temple to have darshan of Jagannath, he bowed down, and the pundit put his foot on his neck while he was bowing down in front of the deity, and he said, "Give a donation." Yeah. And right in front of everybody. And he had his foot right on his neck when it was giving, the thunderbud. And and he wouldn't take the foot off his neck until he gave a donation. Does that sound like transcendental pastime in front of Lord Jagannath? No, that's crazy, right? So those are the pandas in India. They are many of them are like bullies, just asking for money all the time. Has anyone ever experienced this in India?
Nothing. I mean, they are pestered for money sometimes.
Last time when I met Maharaj, he forced me to take flag. One of the pandas
Force you to do what?
Flags will be there, Maharaj. Jagannath flag on top. That flag they're selling. He forced me to take the flag.
How much was it?
It was 2,000.
2,000 rupees.
Yeah.
He could understand you were from America. So how did you feel about that?
I mean, the forcing I didn't like, Maharaj.
Well, would you go back there again?
But Jagannath had.
Yeah.
I have seen Maharaj in childhood, like sometimes these so-called trees, they will force some people to donate more. If they are donating very small amount, they will force them.
They'll not take, Maharaj. When you are giving some 1,000 or 100 something, they don't take. They'll tell, keep some more, keep some more.
Yeah. Well, this is disturbing to some people, or a lot of people, right? And some other people just tolerate it. But sticking your foot on the neck of someone when they're bowing down in front of Jagannath, that's pretty severe.
Nobody else said anything. Well,
It's right in front of the deity. What are they going to say? You're going to get in a fight in front of the deity. So, I mean, these things are going on because you don't have genuine devotees. They're dressed like devotees, but they don't give proper respect. They don't understand the same Paramatma that's in the heart, that's also present in a deity, right? It's in the heart of all living entities. So every living entity should be respected as the temple of the Lord because Paramatma is there. This is correct vision. This is the right way to see things. Then you give respect to everyone and everything. Okay. Go ahead, finish.
There are also many impersonalists who deride temple worship. They say that since God is everywhere, why should one restrict himself to temple worship? But if God is everywhere, is he not in the temple or in the deity? Although the personalist and the impersonalist will fight with one another perpetually, a perfect devotee in Krishna consciousness knows that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality, he is all-pervading as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Although his personal abode is Goloka Vrindavan and he is always staying there, by his different manifestations of energy and by his plenary expansion, he is present everywhere in all parts of the material and spiritual creation.
So that's universal vision of the Lord. That's what we're aiming for, to develop this universal vision of the Lord. You can be in any part of the world. You can be in a good situation or a bad situation. You're never discouraged because you know the Lord is there. It's present in your heart, in the heart of other living entities, in every atom of the universe. Okay, so then we'll read the next verse. Mogashi moga karmano moga karma vicheta saha rakshasim asurim chaiva pakritim mohinim srita. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So now this is a description of the 99.9% who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. Okay? So who's going to read? Somebody else now. Go ahead. There are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness.
There are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the absolute truth. For them, the fruit of devotional service, going back to Godhead, will never be tasted. Similarly, those who are engaged in fruitive pious activities and who are ultimately hoping to be liberated from this material entanglement will never be successful either, because they deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna.
Deride means they make fun of, they criticize, they insult. Go ahead.
In other words, persons who mock Krishna are to be understood to be demoniac or atheistic. As described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, such demonic miscreants never surrender to Krishna. Therefore, their mental speculations to arrive at the absolute truth bring them to the false conclusion that the ordinary living entity and Krishna are one and the same. With such a false conviction, they think that the body of any human being is now simply covered by material nature, and that as soon as one is liberated from this material body, there is no difference between God and himself. This attempt to become one with Krishna will be baffled because of delusion. Such atheistic and demoniac cultivation of spiritual knowledge is always futile. That is the indication of
Futile means it's always going to be a failure.
That is the indication of this verse. For such persons, cultivation of the knowledge in the Vedic literature, like the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, is always baffled.
Baffled means they get confused. They don't understand what's in these books.
It is a great offense, therefore, to consider Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be an ordinary man. Those who do so are certainly deluded because they cannot understand the eternal form of Krishna. The Brihad Vishnu Smriti clearly states...
you don't have to read it, just read the English.
One who considers the body of Krishna to be material should be driven out from all rituals and activities of the Shruti and the Smriti. And if by chance one sees his face, one should at once take a bath in the Ganges to rid himself of infection. People jeer at Krishna because they are...
This is worse than COVID. Go ahead.
People jeer at Krishna because they are envious of the Supreme
Okay,
Personality.
jeer means make fun of, to insult. Go ahead.
Because they are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their destiny is certainly to take birth after birth in the species of atheistic and demoniac life. Perpetually their real knowledge will remain under delusion, and gradually they will regress to the darkest region of the creation.
There you are. You'd be a real failure. So, nobody really wants to be a failure in life. But here we see how to be really successful in life. And that is by having full faith in Krishna and following his instructions and not being afraid to put yourself in a, let's say, in complete surrender to the Lord and attempt to do some wonderful service for the Lord. We should never be afraid to do that. Now, sometimes we might be successful, sometimes we might not be successful. But when you sincerely surrender to the Lord and try your best to serve him by following the rules and regulations strictly, you will see the helping hand of the Lord. It's a mysterious thing that there are situations in which things look impossible to achieve, but yet, by the mercy of the Lord, you're able to achieve it. Now, that's something you have to actually experience. How do you experience it? Simply by going on Sankirtan and dancing, chanting, distributing prasadam, flowers, and books, and little by little giving full respect to people, because you see that they are a walking mandir, or a temple of God, because Krishna is present in their heart as Paramatma. The more you see things like that, the more you'll be successful in spreading Krishna consciousness. And people will understand, like, this person is different. They're looking at me, but they see something in me that I don't even see myself. So what is it? You're seeing Krishna in their heart. That's who and they have a jiva, and the jiva is right next to Krishna, but is not really Krishna conscious. And now you're trying to help them become Krishna conscious. And if you are sincere in your efforts, they will thank you, and they'll become, let's say, a devotee. So the greatest pleasure in life is to be able to train people to be Krishna conscious. It's like, it's more powerful than, having babies and seeing them grow up. When you see a person who is completely in Maya, and little, by your preaching and by spending time and energy, they became a devotee. That is the greatest pleasure in the world, or the greatest achievement, because it's like saving a person's life. And when you start that process, you suddenly see this is worth more than all the money in the world. To make one person a devotee is one of the greatest achievements you could ever do in this lifetime. And that person will be thankful to you also for the rest of their life. So we should think about these things very seriously, and then have a real understanding of what is success in human life, as opposed to the phony success. You become like Jeff Bezos, or one of these people, a multi-billionaire. Like, you can go on the internet and look up, who are the richest people in the world. This one has $10 billion, and that one has $40 billion, and that one has $100 billion, right? But is that actually success? Well, no, because every one of those persons is going to get old, get sick, and die, and lose everything. And probably because of all the sins they committed, they would take birth in an animal life, an animal body. So that's not success, it's failure. And every one of those people is going to die, no matter how much money they have. One time, this very, very rich man in Greece, he owned many merchant ships. He was a multi-billionaire. And one day his son had an accident flying a plane, and the father immediately went to where the plane was crashed, and the boy was severely injured, and there was some ambulance there and doctors, and he said to the doctors, "I'll give you anything you want. You want $5 million or you want $5 billion, I'll give it to you, just save my son." And they looked at him and said, "There's nothing we can do." So he has all that money, but he can't save his own son, no matter how much money he has. His name was Onassis, and he married the wife of President John Kennedy. After he was assassinated, then his wife married this Onassis, who was this Greek guy who was very, very rich. But all the money he had couldn't save his son from dying. So we see there are laws of material nature that cannot be overcome. And if we try to overcome them, that's the most foolish thing we could do, and it's just a waste of time. It's not going to work. So, therefore, don't try and do something that's impossible, that's against the laws of material nature. Do something that's possible. That is, become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead and take many people with you. That is possible. You're going to change the laws of material nature? That's impossible. You're just wasting your time. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? You see, there are very profound verses and purports in Bhagavad Gita. Very, very profound. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, in Bhagavad Gita 9.11, it says, everyone should therefore be given proper respect and should not be neglected.
Yeah.
Even some of the Mayavad philosophers, they do talk about this, Maharaj, that everybody should be given, every human being should be given proper respect and should not be neglected. If they just followed that but did not acknowledge the presence or the existence of Krishna, but still followed this sincerely, why will they still be pushed to the darkest regions of creation?
Well, if they follow it, they won't. Right?
No, I think the question is if they respect the humans but they don't accept Krishna.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because if they respect all human beings without neglecting anybody, but they don't believe in the existence of Krishna, why will they still be pushed to the darkest regions of creation?
You can't give respect to everyone and ignore Krishna. That won't work. Just like if you take a bath every day but never drink water, how long do you think you could live? You see, no, it doesn't work like that. You have to respect Krishna first, and then you respect all living entities, because you see the same Krishna in everyone's heart. That works. There's no way of getting around it. These are laws of nature. You can't change these laws. You can't adjust them to your own, false concepts. You can try. So are there examples of people that respect everyone but ignore Krishna? Yes, there are. Like if you read the history of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, his brothers or his uncles, they respected Lord Chaitanya, but they didn't respect Lord Nityananda. So, Krishna appeared, Lord Nityananda appeared before Krishnadas Kaviraj and said, immediately leave your brothers, never come back. Go to Vrindavan and serve all the devotees there. And he followed that. Why? Because if someone says, oh, I respect Lord Chaitanya but not Lord Nityananda, that is a very serious mistake. And you shouldn't associate with a person like that. So you see, either you follow integrally Krishna consciousness, or you pick and choose. I'll follow this thing, I won't follow that thing. As soon as you start picking and choosing, it doesn't work anymore. It's just like everything in your car works, but there's no battery. Would your car start? No. Everything else works, but you don't have a battery. So the source of all energy is Krishna. So how can you ignore Krishna and just do something else that you think is right? It's not going to work. That is your answer.
Thank you, Maharaj. That makes sense. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
This relating to 9:12 to the homework we have 15:20. I'll read the 15:20 where I am a little confused. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. So, as we gradually progress in devotional service, which means the darkness in us is going away. Is that?
What's that?
The darkness of the material contamination is going away.
When we engage in devotional
devotional service.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Now in 9:12, there are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
I'll give you an example. There was a man living in Bellevue, and he was like a guru. And he had disciples, and he was teaching Bhagavad Gita. So, one day I was talking to him, and I said something that made him upset. And then he didn't want to talk to me anymore. Right? So what did I say that made him upset? I said that in America, there's a new brand of car every year. And in India, there's a new Bhagavat. There's a new Bhagavan every year. So when I said that, he got upset. He didn't want to talk to me anymore. So, I mean, I was just repeating something that Prabhupada said, right? So he got really upset. He thought it was very insulting. So as time went on, he had this one lady that was a disciple of his, and she would sometimes come to ISKCON programs, especially ones outside the temple. And one day, we were having a festival, and I felt as if, this was a long time ago, where we set up a whole kitchen at the in the waterfront in Seattle for like 3 days, and we cooked there. These were old time techniques that we had. Anyway, I was cooking one afternoon for the prasadam that we were distributing in the festival, and I felt as if someone was watching me. So after a few minutes, I turned around to see if there was someone there, and there was this woman. She had like sunglasses on, a hat and everything, so you couldn't really see her face, but I seemed to recognize her. So I said, I looked at her, I said, hi, who are you? She said, you don't recognize me? I said, well, I can't really see your face that easily. You have the sunglasses on, you have this cloak over your head. She said, I'm the disciple of so-and-so. I said, oh, yeah. I said, I haven't seen you for a long time, and I haven't seen your guru either. She said, oh, he died. Oh, I said, I'm very sorry to hear that. She said, yeah, very sad, and I haven't been able to recover from his loss. I said, well, what happened exactly? She said, well, at one point, he got very sick, and his health kept deteriorating, and he became very bitter and angry at Krishna. I said, really? And she said, yes. And then she said that he started speaking against Krishna because he had a young wife, and now he was dying. He couldn't enjoy his wife anymore, and everything seemed to be a failure for him. Now, I was not surprised, but I didn't want to say anything like that. And what happened is that she became morose also, because everything the Guru was teaching from Bhagavad Gita, all of a sudden it turned upside down, because he was criticizing Krishna. Why in his prime he was dying and he couldn't enjoy life anymore. Now you see, this is an example of what happens when person doesn't, although it talks about Krishna, but doesn't really have faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As soon as there's a problem in life, they get upset and they say there's something wrong with Krishna. I was following everything he was saying, and now this thing has happened to me, and it's not fair, and that means that Krishna is not God. So there are many people who claim to be Krishna conscious, but in certain situations they show that they don't actually believe in God, because their purpose is, see, when everything is going all right, it looks like they believe in God. When things seem to go wrong, that's the test whether you actually believe or not. So a real devotee is not does not waver in success or failure, whereas people whose faith is, let's say, tangential to success, when there's failure, they get upset and they reject God. So that every one of us is going to be tested. It's called the Mahatma test. Just like the more advanced you get, the more severe the test. The more advanced you get, the more severe the test is going to be. And the example is Haridas Thakur. He was tested twice. Once by a prostitute, and once by Maya Devi herself. You should read this. It's in the it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The second time he was tested was by Maya Devi herself. And both times he succeeded, and both times, in the first case, the prostitute surrendered to him and she became a pure devotee. In the second case, Maya Devi failed to put him into illusion, and then she became his disciple. And he instructed her how to chant Hare Krishna. Or in other words, he gave her instructions on how to be Krishna conscious. So we see the Mahatma test. It's going to happen to all of us. We'll be vetted by Krishna to see whether we're sincere or not. So it's easy to be sincere when everything is successful. It's not so easy to be sincere when everything seems to be a failure. So the real test is in both situations, in success or failure. And we shouldn't be afraid of the test. But it's going to happen. It's going to be, the more advanced you get, the more severe the test will be. Okay, we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. What? Yeah, okay.
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा श्रील प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा श्री गुरु चरणा पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा श्री चरणा पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा बंदो मोहि सावधान माते बंदो बंदो मोहि सावधान माते मोहि सावधान माते जहर प्रसादे भाई ए भव तोरिया जाय प्रसादे भाई ए भव तोरिया जाय कृष्ण प्राप्ति होय जहाँ होय ते कृष्ण कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जहाँ होय ते गुरुमुख पद्म व्याख्या चिते ते कोरिबो व्याख्या मुख पद्म व्याख्या चिते ते कोरियो व्याख्या अरना कोरी हो मने आशा अरना कोरी हो मने आशा श्री गुरु चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति ये प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा ये प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा ये प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते मुक्ति होते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेदे गाय जहर चरितो वेदे गाय जहर चरितो
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना हा हा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद चया हा हा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छया हा हा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया हा हा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया ए बेजाश गुशुक त्रिभुवाना ए बे गुशुक त्रिभुवाना प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना प्रभुपाद लोहिलो शराना प्रभुपाद लोहिलो शराना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा श्रीला प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा शिला प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा शिला प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा नमा ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमदे भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामीति नामिने नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमदे भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चादेशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Namo The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Loknath Goswami, O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.